This is looking really good, guys. Back the camera up just a bit more. Okay, so next up, we should probably install the power supply. The power supply goes underneath this thing. This is actually here to help with airflow. So the power supply goes underneath this cover, and then cool air comes in from the bottom of the case and then through the front of this thing, through the front fan over here. And that way the power supply doesn't suck up hot air from the rest of the case. So there are 3 thumb screws on the other side of the case that we need to take out in order to remove this cover. So at this point we are going to have to close this one side up, turn the case around, and we'll remove the other side for a while. We will put it all back together at the end of the day, of course, but for now, so to get this thing to close, we do have to just push in the middle on the top and bottom of this thing to kind of slide that glass into place. And I just wanted to put this there so the other side's not swinging around after we turn this case around here. All right, so we will turn, I'm gonna put the top of this back on as well for now. Okay. All right, my entire desk is swinging back and forth, pushing down on that. That's always a great sign. But we'll turn this around. And to remove this other side, it is much more like a standard case. We've just got 2 thumb screws on the back here, which we will unscrew one at a time. They do have Phillips heads if you ever do need to use a screwdriver for them. And just like my old case, those were definitely holding on some pressure here, coming from cords jammed in the back. Alrighty, so here's what the back of the case looks like. Right here is where the back plate would have been mounted, so if you're installing an Intel motherboard in here, this is a nice case because it includes this window, so you don't have to take the motherboard off to install the liquid cooler. You can just install the motherboard, take the back off, and then this bracket here is something if you were installing an Intel or an older AMD bracket, you would have to put a bracket here on the back at the same time as you're installing the bracket on the other side. At least Intel, I don't know about AMD actually. This is a fan controller that comes with the case. So my old case had like a 2 fan to 1 splitter type thing. This is just like a more complicated version of that. You can plug in like 8 different fans, and then the case is supposed to, I guess, make sure that they're all running at the correct speed when you plug in this thing into your motherboard. We're just gonna leave things plugged in where they came for the most part. And our thumb screws to remove the cover on the other side are right down here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, we'll remove those. And those are going to need a screwdriver for sure, to get started at least. And you can see lots of nice Velcro ties that come with this case. This case really does have a lot of bells and whistles that come with it for cable management. It's really one of the nicer cases around right now, especially if you're building on a budget. I don't want to say this is a budget build, but I certainly like to get my money's worth out of the stuff that I do buy. In this case, certainly it's on the lower end for price point for cases actually, yet it comes with all this nice stuff. You can see some headers here that we will be connecting to our motherboard later as well. That's for like the front USB 3.0 ports right there and some other stuff. But we will turn this around again now. Okay, and now if we take this bottom thumb screw off our glass side once again and swing that open again, now we should be able to pull our power supply cover off just like that. Okay, so we'll set that up top, and at this point we'll grab our power supply, which we actually have not even unboxed yet. Great. So I've got to move some stuff around here. We are running out of room. This is going to be an interesting setup once I'm done with regards to where this is sitting on my desk and how much desk space I have left, but I do think we'll be okay. So right back here is our power supply. This is, if you can see it here, a Corsair HX1000 power supply. The difference between the HX1000 and the HX1000i is that the HX1000 does not come with Corsair's software monitoring and control support. But that software support only works on Windows anyway, not Linux, which I will be running. And I've heard that even on Windows it doesn't work that well. So I just picked up the cheaper HX1000 that doesn't come with that extra feature. It still provides the same amount of power. So if I grab my knife from over here, we'll tilt this camera down a little bit so you can see that better. We are going to slice into our packaging. We've got plastic wrap, shrink wrap around the whole thing. We will peel that off. Okay, so 1,000 watt power supply. There will be multiple graphics cards in this computer, in addition to a very high-end CPU and, you know, other things. So I think 1,000 watts should do us pretty well. Just for comparison, my old desktop that I built at the start of this channel was 450 watts, I believe. So this is more than double that. We are going to open this thing up from the side. Just pulls open like that. There we go. Is that in the shot? Hopefully. So we pull open these flaps. This is another one where there's a box inside the box. Oh, but that's actually not going to come out. Okay. So there is a box inside of this skin here, but we don't need to take that all the way out. We can just open up this box inside here. While it's still in there, that'll save us some space anyway. Oh, well, nope, never mind. The whole thing is going to come out, which is fine. Just trying to keep our video classy here, since I was trying to make a point to do that today. Okay, so here is the inner box, which is much more plain in this case. There's a sticker at the top with model numbers. We'll just slice that so we can open this. Okay. This thing opens all the way up. Very interesting design. And on the inside here, they include the same booklet, it looks like, for several different series of power supplies. And as you can see, there is one higher model called the HX1200. We've got the second highest model. There's another info packet right there. Just gonna flip through these things. One of them is a manual. And this has stuff about like the efficiency and everything, like graphs and things. Obviously, we've already purchased the power supply. We're not gonna be doing a lot of tuning, so that's not a huge deal. Our smaller packet here just has some safety information, it looks like, and warranty information in lots of different languages. So in here you can see we've got a plastic bag with zip ties. We do have a Corsair sticker we can put on the outside of this case. And we've got our 4 screws right in there, which is probably the most important part of this bag. So we'll set that over there. We do have a standard 3-pin power supply, or a 3-prong power supply, you know. It's your normal United States power supply, standard. Set that right over there. You can never have too many of those. We've got packing stuff that you're not supposed to eat. We've got a carrying case for your power supply in case you want to take your power supply on the go, I guess. Which, of course, is a desktop. You're not going to be doing that. Oh, if we open this up, okay, so this is actually a bag containing the different modular connectors. So my last power supply, I think, was like semi-modular, but this one is fully modular. So there's no cords plugged into the power supply by default. You plug in the cords that you need, and then the ones that you don't need, you don't even have to put in the case. Bringing up this styrofoam here on the inside, there is a nice felt bag in here with the power supply in it. You can pull that up. Yeah, it's a drawstring bag. Once again, in case you're taking your power supply with you out on the street, you know, this is Nerd on the Street, so we can close this this nice bag up and take this power supply wherever we need to provide 1,000 watts of power. Right now, that would be in our desktop. So we are going to open this, and the power supply is inside of a plastic bag in here. Okay. And inside that final plastic bag here is the power supply itself. HX1000. You can see the HX1000i has a blue accent. The HX1000 just has the gray accent. Just a way you can distinguish between them. We've got some info on the top about it. We've got the other side also has the model. We've got the fan once again, since this is the normal HX1000, that's gray. Yeah, nice large fan once again, so it's more efficient and less loud. Then finally, this is the part that sticks out the back of your computer. Once again, says HX1000 in gray, and the fan will not spin until it actually needs to start spinning, just like the graphics cards that I have. That's an interesting phenomenon. A lot of new tech does that. The fans don't turn on at all until they actually need to, which is kind of cool. Although it does make it hard to tell if things are turned on or not sometimes. Okay, so at this point we'll move our box down here. This should be one of the simpler things to install. Coming back over to the other side here, I will turn our camera so we're pointed a bit more at the case. And if you've never seen this done before, to install the power supply, this thing just goes in the corner down here. Now there is a fan grill at the bottom of this case, and there is a dust filter on the bottom of that. So we're going to put our fan facing the bottom, and it's going to suck up air, cool air in from the bottom, and that air won't have any dust in it because of that nice dust filter that comes with this case. So also, here's the part where, like I said, there's no extra cables that you don't need that are going to be sitting in your case. Like my other desktop, I've got extra cables jammed behind that back plane, behind the motherboard, that I'm not using. This one, you only plug in what you're going to use. So you plug in power for the CPU, for whatever your graphics cards are going to be, and your hard drives, and then that's it, you just leave it. There's a switch here to enable and disable some of those. We are going to have 2 graphics cards in here. I'm just going to leave it at the default. We're going to put this thing in now. Now at the back of the case, we are going to have 4 screw holes, which we can use with the 4 screws that came with this power supply. So if we turn this thing as much as we can here, maybe I can show you that. Okay, so right there, that's where the power supply is peeking out the back, and that's where we're going to screw it in. Okay, so our screw holes are going to be here, 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 and here, and there are plenty of holes in the back here, so you can actually turn the power supply whichever direction you want. Looks like my old one was actually turned the other way. I am just going to look up really quick, make sure it doesn't actually matter which way we turn it. Like I said, the reason I wanted it this way is so that it's utilizing that bottom opening for air. Alright, and it looks like power supplies in general do blow air out the back, and if it's going out the back, that would mean it has to be coming in from wherever else the fan is. So this orientation is going to work just fine for us. We have verified. Doing my research, trying to do this build right, and we will start screwing in the first screw here. It's a little bit tough. If I open this up and hold this in place, might get a bit easier. Start grabbing our other screws and putting those in as well. Alright, it is a little tough to screw these in. Oh, here we go. It's getting easier. Yeah, there we go. Just needed to get it started on the right track. The one thing I'm not doing with this build is testing as I go. That's something that you're supposed to do, is like put the processor into the motherboard, make sure it posts. Put the RAM into the motherboard, make sure it posts. Put the graphics card into the motherboard, make sure it posts. You're supposed to do all kinds of stuff before you even put it in the case at all. I never end up doing that just because that seems like a lot of work and not quite as fun as just putting it in the case itself. But of course, in the event that something is dead on arrival, then I gotta take the whole thing back apart before I can send it back in. So I guess keep that in mind if you're doing a build of your own. You might want to look up the proper order to do things with testing and whatnot. Okay, that was more difficult than I would have liked it to be, but we got it done. This probably doesn't sound great, talking through a glass panel or from behind a glass panel. But that's how you screw in your power supply. So now we plug it in here, flip the switch, and then we'll be good to go. While we've got this turned, I really do like the way that this back I/O here looks. I'm just gonna take the camera off the tripod for a moment and take a look how that looks. This is coming together really nicely. I like the look of that back plate. I'm glad I installed the I/O shield for this one. We're about to get our graphics cards in. They'll show up here, and then at the bottom there we've got our power supply. Cool. So it is coming together, and we've got a fan pre-installed in the back. There's one in the front as well. So back to the tripod for you guys, and we'll move our tripod back over here. Put this back to a semi-normal angle. Okay, and right now I'm going to come over here, turn this back toward us a bit, and we'll start connecting things up. We'll put the motherboard, plug it into the power supply, plug the CPU into the power supply, and the last thing we'll have to do is put in our graphics cards. So we'll unbox the one of them, we'll take the other one out of my external box, my eGPU box, and we'll put it in this as well. Then we'll power the whole thing on. I said I was going to put an optical drive in here, but I don't have it with me. I actually just had somebody text message me that I left it somewhere else. But I wasn't going to use that for installation anyway. I just like to have an optical drive because I make CDs sometimes to listen to in older cars and things like that. And I like having them to test for DVD burning for Displaced once every couple of years. But it's not like I use it all the time. Now there is some plastic over here on the case. Here we go. Just going to remove the plastic from all these little bits of metal in here just to make it look a bit nicer. Not sure if you can tell or not, but that's getting more shiny as I remove the plastic. But yeah, this is where the optical drives would slide in here. Very easy push button release. Not a lot of screwing required for those. Alright, okay. And finally there's one at the bottom here that I'll grab. Don't know if they wanted us to take the screws off of there before we did that. Nope, looks like we were good on one of them. Try not to leave any plastic behind in here. There's not a screw on the other side of that for me to unscrew anyway. Okay, so we'll stick with that. And like I said, I'm going to start plugging in things to the power supply over here, just one at a time. Now I guess I should pay attention to how this is going to run, so if we put our cover back on here, we won't screw it back in yet, but just to put it there so we know where it goes. Alrighty. So things can either come through these holes at the bottom here, or they can be routed, I guess, through the back of the entire case, which is what we'll want to do for most of it. Now we've got to take this right back off so we can actually plug some cables into that power supply. As you can see here, there are holes right there for cables to go right through to the other side of the case. So I don't have a good enough setup going on right now to where I could attempt to try and show you plugging in every single cable. I think most of my viewers are smart enough to figure out how to plug cables in. So I'll leave the camera running while I'm doing this, but I'm not going to worry about getting the angle perfect for every single plug-in. You can go watch Linus Tech Tips or somebody else if you want 100% perfect shots like that, but I'd love to get there someday. Feel free to join the Nerd Club, and then I can pay for a location with more space than this where I could actually do that kind of thing. Alright, so which side do we plug in to the power supply? So it looks like the side that breaks apart more goes into the power supply, just like that, and then the side that's all one chunk of just 24 pins goes into our motherboard. So we'll try and do this nicely. We're gonna run this cable through the back here, and I'm gonna reach around the back and pull that through. Then up here we'll push it through, we'll say the middle section here. Okay. And that'll come through, and we'll just plug it right into our motherboard on the side. So we gotta flip it around. Okay. And there we go. That thing is plugged in. Fairly certain that the clips went. I didn't hear them, but I think I felt them. Alright, so that's all we have to do for plugging the motherboard in. Next up, we'll try and find the processor. Alright, here we go. So I found the cable labeled CPU. I'll never forget the time that me and my friend Michael Chanot once built a computer. We remembered to plug everything else in. We remembered to plug in our 20 plus 4-pin connector. It wasn't just one chunk like that. It was actually two separate things. It was a 20-pin and a 4-pin. We plugged them both in. But we forgot to plug in the 6-pin CPU connector, or 8-pin, or whatever it was. So we thought we had a bad motherboard, or bad RAM, or a bad processor, or something. We couldn't figure out why this computer was not booting, was not even posting. And then eventually we found out it was because we hadn't plugged in the power for the CPU, and we found that out after we'd been troubleshooting for hours at his house. I have never forgotten to plug in the CPU power again since then. I don't remember if that was a build that we recorded or not. That might have been one of the ones that we tried to record and then ended up just scrapping the recording because it was so long by the end after all the troubleshooting. Alright, now I'll plug this into our power supply here. Okay, and once again that'll go through the hole at the bottom. For this one, I am going to pass it through the hole at the very top of our case. Looks like this plugs in at the top right here. So we will do that. And most of this stuff is pinned out correctly to where you can't really plug it into the wrong thing. Of course, it's always good to consult your motherboard manual just to make sure, but we are many hours into this recording probably. So I will plug that in. That looks really good. Okay, this is going to be the best looking build I've ever done. I've never put any thought into cable management before, but you guys want it, so I'm doing it. Okay, at this point we're going to install our graphics cards. I'm actually going to close up our case, scoot this back so that we can do our unboxing of the graphics card, and I can talk about that.